Welcome to this next episode of YouTube where Boltz is back in the mix. He was able to get a deer leg popsicle during an enrichment. You can still see a little bit of flies there. There's a face wipe on Grayson, and we are in the end of the summer season. That's Axel doing a standing urination actually. Usually Axel's doing a raised leg urination, but that's the typical marking spot. They have a tendency to mark in common areas, and that white pine residual stump there is one of those places where they typically mark. So we're kind of winding down and getting a little bit of cooler temperatures. That means Boltz is coming back out during the daytime, and we are also getting some of the beds ready for kind of cooler temps. So we're putting some wood chips in the dens and getting rid of some of that really thick, dense vegetation in front of the dens. We will start pulling some of the weeds in here that are growing burrs because we want to make sure that we get them out before they get caught on the wolf's hair. It's a lot harder to get them off the wolf's hide a little bit. Boltz started to come down for wolf care. We have a couple of morning shots on the camera here, and you can see he's getting some scratches, and because he hasn't been handled and groomed much of the summer, he does itch a little bit. So that's a famous Boltz expression, getting a good rub down, and so I'm trying to scratch down and get down to that undercoat, things that haven't been brushed out because he hasn't been willing to be handled, and a lot of dander there. So that it feels good to him to have that kind of handling. So we're back in a circumstance where we're able to do that. And Denali has been a little bit challenged in this last couple of warm or cooler nights. There's a little competition over food, and it got Axel kind of riled up and Grayson kind of excited, and they did first of all ride up on his hips, where they're riding up on the side of him and kind of pushing down his hips, and then as he kind of stumbles a little bit, it stimulates a little bit more predatory drive, and the grab bite kind of occurred. You can see he's a little stiff to get up here. So that happened yesterday on, let's see, that would have been Thursday the 8th. So he started some Duramax for anti-inflammatory just to help kind of ease that joint issues. So we're obviously keeping an eye on that. We are prepared to retire Denali. Our preference is to wait till Grizzly passes because we have a little bit of conflict there, but obviously that's not going to preclude us from doing a judgment of retirement. So the other thing that happened was a great blue heron was on the camera. Someone had texted me early in the morning and said that the wolves have a heron up against the window. Well, by the time I got here, he was up on top of the garage. He's lost a little bit of wing feathers, but he walked away and flew away. And so we don't know what encouraged him to land in our pond, but certainly the vegetation's fairly dense here. I think it would be hard-pressed for anything flying over to know that this wasn't just an open water source. And so we are happy that we've had a good wet season. Obviously, a lot of vegetation that has happened over the summer, and so we are definitely in a circumstance where it's good habitat for the wolves, certainly good cover for them, and obviously a lot of the natural wildlife that are seen in this enclosure, like red squirrels and many birds of prey that come in to feed on the carcasses and things. And it's not the first time that we've had a water-loving species in here. I was several years ago where mallard had landed on the pond, and then when Maya went after him, tried to dive, which that's not a very deep pond, so that wasn't very, a good decision. But he did manage to get out of the pond as well. So it's not the first time that we've had things land in here because it is a very good representation of the natural habitat that's around. So not unusual at all. So you can see that slate den there. We pulled the weeds kind of in front of it, put some wood chips in there. The nights are getting cooler. We're in the 40s now, so we want to make sure if it is especially rainy and cold that we have a good place for them to get out of the weather. We do have 2 dens within this enclosure. We also have wood chips under the eaves, so there's a lot of area. So if the wolves are not interacting well, they still have a good place to go. So like I said, this is Denali here. He went down pretty quick there for a scratch, and he's really able to move well yet. So we, certainly don't feel like this is a daily crisis, but we want to keep an eye on that. And we do know that the wind does get the wolves a little bit stirred up. Competition for food, colder weather, changing hormones. These are all things that can kind of drive the pack to be a little bit more rammy. again, Denali's the oldest wolf that we have maintained in the exhibit pack with younger animals. So he's 11. That's certainly an age where you're normally relaxing in retirement. So it's his choice. We want to make sure if he's socially interacting with them, we'll kind of leave him in. So these younger animals aren't doing anything wrong. They're just young animals who are looking at opportunities and stimulated by the weather, stimulated by the change in seasons. And certainly, their maturing minds keep them always testing and looking for opportunities to move up. So next year when we have pups, the presence of the pups is going to stir some prolactin hormone, so that'll make a little bit of a nurturing cycle. And then obviously the focus of these guys will be turned towards the new pack members and less on the old. So if Denali does manage to hold it together until those pups come, really all the focus is going to be on rearing those pups, and Grayson and Axel are going to be busy, forming relationships and kind of showing boundaries and things to the newest pack members. So I think Boltz, and if Denali is still there, are going to see less focus as they do now. So that's kind of what's going on. Grayson still continues to be the wolf that sees things that are a little bit stressful and responds to them. So let you listen to a howl. In Luna's world, her incision is healing better. We're down to about an inch right now, so it took us a long time to try to get this to heal. Like the vets say, healthy cells heal quickly. Cancer-based cells are going to be slower to heal. So we did have her open that, by scratching early on, and so we've been keeping it covered with wound powder, what's called wound dust, to try to keep it dry. Cleaning it on a daily basis, trying to give her antibiotics and giving her meds, and making sure that she's comfortable. You can see the blue fleece in the back. We want her to lay on that fleece rather than in the dirt, so we have a couple of different fleece blankets for her. And you can see she's, definitely still off. No doubt, we're doing the best to make her comfortable with a really not a great scenario, meaning that this is not going to go away. This is going to be something that's progressively worse, but we want to get this incision healed. And we're also having some contractors here in sight to get a roof line finished on the back habitat. We hope by Monday we can then open that all back up and allow Aiden and Grizzer to rejoin her in the last, again, what may be the few months of her life. We want her to have the social companionship. And actually, with Aiden's circumstance, we feel that his immune system is being impacted by this change to his pack structure. So Luna's got good mobility. She's very alert. She's certainly better than we could have hoped, given the prognosis. But we want to get her back together with Aiden. So the circumstance with Aiden, I wrote about it in the Wolf Vlogs this last week. As anytime we have a medical issue, we always try to go back and look at history of wolves, and that, what might have been some events that may have coincided with a circumstance. And with Aiden, we just seem to kind of come to this recurring pattern that his immune system seems to be compromised when we have a circumstance related to a change in pack dynamics. And we can't say for certain that one is causing the other, but there certainly does seem to be some correlations with his autoimmune disorders and stress-related circumstance when we change pack dynamics. And so really Aiden's had troubles since we've isolated Luna. for her medical conditions. He's had a reoccurring flare-up of some mast cell tumors, some in the places where he had previously had them extracted, some new places to the point where he's got about 10 or so different areas on his body that are now impacted by these mast cells. So we have increased his antihistamines because mast cells are histamine-based, and we've also given him a series of antibiotics because one of the areas had ruptured, and so we're trying to calm those down a little bit. We do intend to take him in for a biopsy to be able to really be certain what we're dealing with, whether it is mast cells or whether there may be something else going on. But in the hopes of him having a better recovery, we think reuniting him with Luna is going to be helpful to him. We always want to be mindful that Luna's decline from the cancer doesn't cause her anxiety or cause her to be viewed as weak, although with these retirees, the idea of rank is really less important in retirement as it is in the exhibit pack. And you can see here by Grizzer and Aiden, just kind of hanging out together. Aiden having a lot of yawning and a lot of kind of licking in this little clip here, showing that he's got a little bit of stress. But the reality is there's less and less dominance that goes on with the individuals, and even to the point where when we, bring Aiden back in after a biopsy, he'll be reunited with the group in a short period of time, where in the exhibit pack, we wouldn't even think about doing a biopsy and having a wolf come back in who's vulnerable because the younger animals are much more likely to take advantage of them. So that's something that we'll kind of keep you posted if we figure out what's going on. I do believe that he's improving since we started the new course of treatment, and hopefully we'll see overall relaxation from having the pack back together again. Right now we know that Luna is whining towards them. Grizzer is not exactly whining towards Luna, but I think Grizzer will do whatever Aiden does. They seem to be, kind of have a bond going on with each other. We will still separate them to feed to make sure everybody gets their own food. There's no stress about eating, but we're having contractors put a roof on the back transition area back to the back habitat so that we can open that up as another place to be able to get cover and away from heat and weather related issues. So if they do want to isolate themselves to various places, they'll have more than just the dens. They can go into other roofed areas, and including keeping the building open for any of the three who want to come inside. So that's what we're kind of watching for. The Canine Stress Dictionary is on hand for staff to know that yawning, usually repetitive yawning, is a sign of stress. Licking, blinking, those kinds of things. So we're asking people to really document Aiden's stress response. And I think once we can see that decreased, I think we'll see an improvement in his overall health. So that's it for right now. Lots going on. We'll try to keep you posted once we know more about Aiden's condition. Thanks for watching.